Hey Ryan, how do I get project-based learning started at my school? I've gotten some form of this question nearly every day for the last decade from engaged educators just like you. So at Magnify Learning, we've created a free download to get you started. Whether you're a superintendent, principal, coach, or teacher, go to whatispbl.com to get started on your project-based learning journey today. Are you ready to bring project-based learning to your school? The PBL Simplified podcast will help equip you for your PBL journey with weekly need-to-knows, engaging interviews, PBL showcases from facilitators in the classroom, and PBL leadership episodes to move you towards a successful implementation of PBL. Because every learner deserves to be a part of an inspiring story, and we see daily that project-based learning helps make this happen. If you want me to answer your PBL need-to-know on the podcast, visit whatispbl.com and click on Ask Ryan to submit your question.
Thank you for joining me today on the PBL Simplified podcast. I do appreciate those listener questions. We want to be a listener-driven podcast, just like you want to have student-driven classrooms and staff-driven buildings. We want you to be engaged in this podcast, make sure it's meeting your needs. I'm Ryan. I'm your host here at the PBL Simplified podcast, and we have an interesting topic in July in their leadership episodes. It's going to revolve around confidence. How do we become a confident leader? And this topic isn't one that's really on my radar before this, but I had a friend who is in real estate, and we were talking, and he read this book called The Confident Mind by Dr. Nate Zinsser. And it's kind of steeped in some of the sports psychology piece. How do athletes get themselves ready for these big events? How do they believe in themselves, even if they have setbacks? And he applies this to, yes, sports, but also business and education. So I really want to bring this to you. I've enjoyed talking about it with other educational leaders in the mastermind that I lead, and we got some really good feedback. So I'm excited to talk about it here in this month. But before we do that, let's jump to our opening need to know. Our opening need to know is, as a building leader, how do I launch my vision? With this sub-question of how do I get everyone on board? And some of you may have chuckled about everyone on board, but let's start at the beginning and work through this need to know because it's really important. When you come into building leadership, a lot of times you were a teacher, maybe you're an assistant principal, now you're in the chair, right? But all along, you always have this idea of what school could be, right? If I were in charge, here's what I would do. We all have this vision. We want, a student-centered classroom. You're listening to the PBL Simplified podcast, so I assume project-based learning is in that vision somewhere, right? We want our learners to be engaged, not passive. We want community partners to be in the building. We want the community to see the school as an asset, right? So all these pieces are running through your mind as you become a building leader. And a lot of times your education doesn't necessarily revolve around the actual implementation of a vision or change process with your staff. So you're left with this question of, I've got this great vision, and then there's where we're at as I've taken on this building or I've been here for 3 years. How do I launch my vision for real? And it's a great question. Number one, you have to have a vision. Right? What is your vision? Have you ever written it out explicitly, or do you just have these random ideas of how things could be better? Because how things could be better isn't really a vision. So you need to write out a vision script. You need to be very clear and distinct. And I've got some past episodes where you can look at that and really draw out your vision. I like to look at it as, your ideal staff. What is some of the communication that you'll have? What's the impact? Like start with the end in mind and then work your way back. But it needs to be clear. People need to be able to know what your vision is and be able to see it, read it before you can launch it. So you first have to know it. And I'm going to tie this into our confidence episodes as well, because you need to have confidence in that vision. So where does that confidence come from? We'll dive into that. But how do you launch your vision? First, you have to have it so that others can buy into it. And that's number two. Number two, you need to give people an opportunity to speak into that vision so that they can now have some handholds. They can be like, yes, I'm a part of that vision. Yes, I'm being heard. And sometimes in the classroom and in the school building level, sometimes we get too wrapped up in getting people's voices first. It's okay for you to map out your vision. You are the building leader. You're supposed to have that building vision. So you can write it out and it can be there. And now you start to bring people in. Maybe it's a teacher leadership team. Say, hey, here's the vision that I really have for our school. Where can we start to tie you into this? What do you think? How would you mold that? What do you like? What do you wonder? And as you do this, as you bring people in, what you find most times is they don't feel micromanaged. They don't feel like you're bodging in or bullying in to do what you want to do and not what anybody else does. Most of the time, they're inspired. They didn't know that you had these inspirational dreams. They thought you were maybe just going to manage the status quo, keep things going, put some fires out. When you start to launch a vision, people get excited. They want to get behind a vision. They want to be a part of something special. So as you start to share this vision that you have, it allows people to come in and be a part of it. And once they're a part of it, now they're moving their vision forward, connected to your vision, and now you're starting to build some momentum. The third point I'm going to tie into kind of this sub question that was connected to this one is, how do you get everyone on board? And at this point, part of it just comes back to differentiation, right? Even for adults, is you can't get everybody on board the same way. So you also can't fire half your staff because they don't like your vision, right? So how do you get people on board? I love Simon Sinek's TED Talk on this. As he talks about the power of why, he also talks about Apple and the innovation curve. There are some people that will camp out, to get the latest iPhone. And there are some people that are going to get it once it comes to market. And there's going to be some people that will, be early adopters and say, yeah, it works, so I'll grab it. Then there's going to be some late majority. And then you've got laggards on the tail end of the innovation curve that are like, well, I would only take a smartphone if I can't have a flip phone, right? That have to be brought in because that technology is not in existence anymore. So I like the way he talks about the innovation curve in this people-centered manner. And I think if you look at your staff, you have a similar layout as an innovation curve. You have some innovators where if you say, like, hey, I'm thinking about project-based learning, they're going to dive in, they're going to start listening to podcasts, reading books, looking at resources, and they'll just start tomorrow. Like, you don't even have to give them anything, you don't have to train them. And then you're going to have some people that are going to see what those innovators do and say, yeah, that's pretty neat, I'll help them create that. And then you're going to have an early majority, and the early majority is going to say, I see that, but I need to know it works. I want to see some research, and I need you to get me some training. I'm not going anywhere until you get me some training. And then they'll jump in. And then you have a late majority. And that late majority is going to say, whoa, that looks different. I'm definitely going to need some training. I'm going to need a school visit. I need to see it work in our school, not some school that, just started and we don't know what it looks like. I need it to be a school that looks like our school. I want to see it with our kids. And then, yeah, I'll do it. It sounds great. I'm happy to jump on the vision. And then some laggards you'll need to move along differently. But the point is everybody on the innovation curve, like you could put your staff on the innovation curve. You could probably think of names with each one of those categories I gave just now. And you need to approach them differently. And you know that intrinsically, but what if you actually put them on an innovation curve and said, you know what, these people are my innovators. I'm going to send them along with some late majority to this PBL school to come back and report back of how it could work here. And then you know that you've got some that'll run with it. You know you have some that are going to need some solid training, and then they'll be on board. You know who your leaders are in your building. So to get everyone on board with your vision, you need to approach them differently. There's no one size fits all. You can't just announce your vision at a staff meeting and say, everybody get on board. Let's start rowing in the same direction so we can do good things for kids. Yeah, but that's not how everybody's going to get bought in. So you're going to need to differentiate that. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that leaders make when they go to launch their vision like this, they prepare it in the summer, do a lot of hard work, launch it the first meeting before school, 2 days before school at the PD, and say, go. And they want everybody to be on board. And it turns out everybody's not on board. And we kind of know that, right? If we give you some feedback that there's going to be different ways to get people on board, there's probably some folks you should get on board this summer, right, before you even announce it so that they can help announce it, right? And there are some people that we know are going to be skeptical. And it's okay, let them be skeptical, right? Go have another conversation, right? Let them wait a little bit, give them some first steps to make before they just have to say, well, I'm not on board with that. That's not what they mean, I'm not on board. It just means I need a different on-ramp to get on board with your vision. I want to be on board with your vision. So when you say, how do I launch my vision? Those are your markers. You want to make sure that your vision is very clear for you. Right? Then you need to allow other people to get on board. Then you need to differentiate those on-ramps for people so that they can get on in the way that they feel most comfortable. So that's going to be our opening need to know, and I'll tie it into our main topic, which is going to be, how do I become a confident leader? So how do you become a confident leader? What happens as leaders is we get on Twitter, right? And you've got your PLN, your personal learning network, or you get on Instagram or Facebook, whatever group that you're a part of, and you get on there and you see people posting all these really well thought out ideas. And they've got a fancy background. Man, how do they decide to put that out there? That's pretty bold, but sounds good. Like I'm with that. And then you might think, well, what would I put out there? And then it's like, well, I don't think I could do that. And then you also might think, I don't feel like I'm up to this task of launching this vision, of being a leader. I'm going to do it. I think this is where I'm supposed to be. But sometimes I just don't feel up to it. Or maybe you've got a day, or like we just talked about launching the vision, like you've launched your vision and it kind of flopped. You had a day where you missed it. Or you're like, I'm just putting out fires. Like, who has time for a vision? Once I put out enough fires, then I'll launch my vision. Then we'll do some innovative educational change. That's why I'm in this position. And all of that, or at least a good chunk of that, is coming from some place where we're lacking confidence. And what Dr. Zinsser talks about in his book, The Confident Mind, is that if we need to get in this confident spot so that we have the best position to hit that home run. If we're waiting and waiting and waiting, we're going to miss and miss and miss. So what he talks about is, he says the first win takes place in our mind. So it's kind of the sports psychology piece, like I mentioned in the intro. Definitely have inroads for us in education. Like, before we step up to talk to our staff, we need to visualize this going well. We need to think through all the times it's gone well, not the times that we've missed it. Because if you think about all the times that you miss it, or if you're up, let's just put it in golf terms, if you would. Even if you don't play golf, I don't play much golf anymore. I've got 5 kids. It doesn't fit our world. But if you think, man, I better not hit it right because there's water over there, you're guaranteed to hit it to the right, aren't you? Like 9 times out of 10, it's going to the right, it's going in the water. Instead of, I'm going to hit this right in the middle of the fairway. Right? Focusing on the positive end of that so that you can then live up to that. So that's what he really talks about, is like, you don't need to be perfect, but you want to step up to the plate or the tee box confidently. So let me give you one quick way, very tangible way that I got out of The Confident Mind. Great book. I've read it like 3 times now, to help you be more confident in your leadership. Because some of you might even be thinking like, Ryan, this topic doesn't hit because I don't need to be more confident. I need to be a better leader. I need to read another Maxwell book, or another leadership book that gets me where I need to be. I need to get Jim Collins going. I need to find my hedgehog. All these different leadership ideas. And yes, there's good things there. You need to be a competent leader, but you also need to be confident. So when you're confident, you're giving yourself the best chance to do well. So here's one piece that I really liked out of Dr. Zinsser's book, is he says that you journal, just like you're doing a gratitude journal at the end of the night, which I really recommend. There's a lot of research that says it's a good idea. He adds this, ESP. Says, look back on your day and find one spot where you had really great effort. That's the E. One time where you had really great success. And one time where you made progress. ESP. So it doesn't mean that you won the day. Maybe the day wasn't awesome. Like, you get done, you're like, oh, I'm exhausted. Right at the end of the day, it was a rough day. Or in the summer, you're like, I thought I would get all this deep work done and I didn't. Well, go back and find the one place in your day where you did produce that effort. You did have a success and you did make progress. I found it to be insanely helpful, especially in those days where I miss it, where maybe you get lost in the weeds or the minutia, the whirlwind. So maybe the effort is like, you did have like 15 minutes of just crushing your inbox, right? Like, maybe that doesn't seem like a super productive or deep work task, but your effort was right there. Or maybe you had a great success because you decided on one part of your vision. You did work on what does an ideal team player look like for you. You got that one success done. Or maybe you had just a little bit of progress. Like, you didn't win and write out your whole vision, but you got a little bit of the intro done. Like, that's progress. And if you have progress, you can build on that for tomorrow. And by building on these wins, you start to Dr. Zinsser has this metaphor where you're putting these deposits into your confidence bank. And as you say, yes, I had this one place of good effort. Yes, I had this one success. Yes, I've made progress. You're making deposits in your confidence account. So the next day you can do the same thing, and the next day, and you start to build confidence. And as you build confidence as a leader, you put this vision out there and you have confidence in yourself and in the vision. You portray this confidence and you're thinking confidence and you're looking for places where it's winning. If you launch your vision, I know some of you would do this because I've done it myself. You would focus on the one person that thought your vision wouldn't work, right? The one person that says, yeah, I've heard somebody say that before. I'm probably going to wait that out. You'll have a different idea 3 years from now. That one person. Meanwhile, you probably had 5 people that came up to you and said, wow, great job. That's awesome. I'm excited about that. I want to see how that goes. Right? And all those voices will be, kind of blurred out by the one person that had a negative thought. When we're talking about a confident mind and a confident leader, you're going to do the opposite. You're going to soak up those 5 positive comments and you're going to brush off the negative comment. You can't ignore it. The person's on your staff. I get it. But that's not going to be the one that you focus on. You're going to purposely focus on those 5 confident ones that said, yes, I'm excited about this vision. As you start to do that, you build confidence, and that gives you more opportunity to create great things. So we talked a little bit in our need to know about how do you launch your vision, tied it a little bit into our confident mind. I want you to be a confident leader. Confidence is going to come. You're listening to a podcast already, so you're likely someone who's seeking out wisdom and knowledge. Let's pair that with confidence. What we're going to do in the next leadership episode is we're going to talk about how you can build up confidence in your staff. What if all of your staff was confident when they went to a conference or a PD session or when they stepped into the room, that classroom, to try something different? What if they were confident in that? Knowing that there's a growth mindset, we're going to grow, we're going to have setbacks, but I'm confident knowing that each setback makes me better. So that'll be our next leadership episode. Make sure you tune in a couple weeks for that one. We'll talk about building up confidence in your staff. As you do that, you know that we're going to engage your learners, we're going to tackle boredom, and we're going to transform your classrooms.